Hello everyone, it is Darkseeker here again. Welcome back for another video. We're back on Wild Mode, and today we are playing Dab's Dude Paladin. Now it is my birthday, 1st of April, and I thought to myself, okay, it's the start of the new season, let's set myself a challenge, a birthday challenge, if you will. I started out at rank 8 on the Wild Mode ladder. How quickly could I get myself to rank 5? Because that's my target each season, getting rank 5 on either standard or wild. And so I started looking for some decks, and of course I just finished watching the Hearthstone Wild Open tournament, and I noticed a player called Dab. Really good player, really good to have got as far as he did, and he was playing a Dude Paladin. Now Dude Paladin, incredibly powerful on standard and on wild. It's a tier 1 deck. Now, in Wild Mode, they have access to some additional cards, like Quartermaster, for example, which really gives the deck an additional sort of punch. So I thought, okay, let's try this deck out. Let's see how quickly we can go from rank 8 to rank 5. Now, here's what interests me about this deck. It runs double Spellbreaker and double equality. So this deck is taking heavily against control decks, trying to get through those taunts, trying to get through those Voidlords. And I've not played an aggro paladin deck before that does run double equality. A lot of decks, if they run equality at all, will run just one copy. So this interests me greatly. And another card that fascinates me in this deck is a Neutron. Obviously synergy with a Rallying Blade, but yeah, I've not played aggro pally before on wild with a Neutron in it, so really interesting. So this deck, starting out at rank 8, we're going to look at my journey to rank 5, and obviously this deck has got, well, it had quite a positive win rate. I played 9 games with it and I won all 9 games. So very small sample size, obviously, but yeah, 9 wins was pretty cool. And going up against a mixture of different decks, some of them tier 1 decks. I mean, look at that streak of mages, 4 mages in a row there, which probably tells you a lot about the ladder. But also some strange decks too. I met a strange druid deck, a strange rogue deck. I met an aggro shaman. Now, aggro paladin versus aggro shaman, that's a 2018 aggro paladin versus what, a 2015 aggro shaman. As aggressive as aggro shaman is, I think paladin can beat it when it comes to just raw power and aggro, even when you're going up against 4-mana 7/7s. Anyway, try the deck on the ladder, and it was met with some resistance. Yes, some people didn't like the fact that I was playing aggro paladin. This guy in particular, and we're going to look at his game, a clip from his game in a minute, but this guy in particular, he really wasn't happy, and okay, I get it. I'm playing an aggro deck. I'm playing an aggro deck that sweeps the ladder sometimes. But this negativity, I mean, it's quite disheartening, really. I mean, I'm not offended by it, but if he's going to be investing that amount of energy and time into being rude and abusive, I think it's just such a shame. But you know, he was playing a Reno Mage, and arguably you could argue that Reno Mage, when it has access to its AoE and its board clears, and to Reno Jackson, you could seriously argue that it is favoured against aggro decks. So let's just have a look at a clip from the game with this guy. Now, he'd had Frostlich Jaina in play, and he was getting his water elementals. And he'd used a multitude of board clears against me up to this point. I think Flame Strike, Blizzard, he'd used different board clears. But I'd got myself into a lucky position where I was able to fill the board with dudes and buff them up massively. And give them Divine Shield at the same time. This is pretty sick. Okay, it's pretty overpowered, it's pretty sick. I get that. But I'd got myself into this lucky position. It doesn't always work out like this. It really doesn't. If the Reno Mage is able to use his board clears efficiently and effectively and stop me getting a foothold on the board, then they play Reno Jackson, and if I don't have many cards in hand or much on the board, they simply win the game. That's what it comes down to. But in this instance, I was able to get some kind of a foothold on the board, and this is what won me the game. But it could have gone either way, honestly. And I wish I'd recorded the entire game, because it would have shown you how many AoEs he did use. And maybe he was too liberal with his use of AoE. Maybe he should have waited a bit from time to time. Because one thing that my deck does specialise in doing is refilling the board very, very quickly. But notice that after that last refill, after I put these dudes on the board, there isn't much left in my hand that is proactive in terms of board filling. So had he been more careful with his use of AoE, maybe he wouldn't be in this position. I don't know, it's hard to say. And I'm just playing it safe here. I'm clearing board. I'm trading into his minions. Who knows? He could have Zola in hand to bring Reno back to his hand. He could have Youthful Brewmaster. But yeah, this is a really tough board for him to beat. And you can see he's got all of the classic Reno deck tools. Explosive Sheep. But yeah. And there you can see the friend request coming through. He really wasn't happy. Okay. So that was a pretty sweet win against a Reno deck there. So, let's try our luck against a mage. Now, Secrets Mage is all the rage at the moment. Secrets Mage can be just as explosive as Aggro Paladin. But whilst they do have some minion presence, their explosiveness comes from throwing spells at your face, bursting you down. And I think the key is to try and get the Secrets Mage to throw those burn spells at your minions on board. That's the key, I think. And if you get them to do that, they commit spells to minions, those spells are not going to your face, you stand a much better chance of winning.
To battle! To battle!
So I'm just going here for board presence. Just trying to fill the board. I mean, 9 times out of 10, it's Secrets Mage, right? Very rarely is it Reno Mage. I think that last game was an exception.
Back to your homes.
I think that player that I faced previously was seeing all of the aggro that's out there at the start of the season and trying his best to counter it.
Excuse me, you are on fire.
Okay, I threw the Steward of Darkshire out there just to see what removal it could bait out. And I was okay with it dying because that's 3 damage burst that killed a minion and didn't go to my face. I can refill the board for the next couple of turns at least. I'm not going to need to worry about that. We just need to keep the pressure going. And, you know, look, 3 damage killing a dude. That's 3 damage that didn't hit my face. Feels good. And I want to play on curve here. Low Theb on curve I think is pretty solid. I have the potential for Knife Juggler into Call to Arms on my next turn. And I'll get some nice juggles out of it. The other issue, though, is that secret. Is it counterspell? That's what I need to watch out for.
Put this apple on your head.
It's not explosive runes, obviously. So, I think it's counterspell, and therefore, I think on this particular turn, just to give me board, I'm gonna play the Stegadon, and I think trading in with Lotheb seems fine. Stegadon to buff my board. +1/+1 or Divine Shield. I'm gonna go with +1/+1. We just push a little bit more damage. So playing around Counterspell, just so that we can get the board presence going. And that is a Firebolt to a Stegadon, a Frostbolt to a Juggler. That's a significant chunk of his burn used up on minions. So now we test for Counterspell. And I'm happy to give up Muster for Battle. I'd rather have Call to Arms.
The battle! The battle!
Okay. Firelands Portal gives him a taunt. Wow. Good for him. But we just keep the pressure going. But notice now, you know, I'm out of cards in my hand, so we're relying on this last push of minions here to get the job done.
Well played.
And it's over. Now, I mean, against control decks, if they could ever get to a point where they could clear your last push of minions, that's how they make their comeback, I guess. But yeah, streaking into rank 7. Get Secrets Mage. Feels good. Okay, heading into our next game here against a Druid. Now, notice this. I kept this hand. I should, in theory, be mulliganing for a 1-drop. That's, I think, theoretically correct. However... No, that's not good. However, I saw a 2-drop, I saw another 2-drop, and I thought, okay, let's keep it. Sequence into a 3. Foregoing my first turn, in essence. But you know what? I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. When you've got 2-drops like a Shielded Minibot, that is not a bad thing at all. I was expecting Jade Druid, so I was expecting a few slow turns for him to start with, but this looks like some kind of an aggro Druid. Still reflecting on... Oh, Dragon Slayer. Still reflecting on my mulligan there. Like, Lost in the Jungle is something that I should have been looking for. But at heart, I'm not an aggro player. At heart, I'm more of a mid-range / control player, so maybe seeing a couple of 2-drops was enough for me, you know, to satisfy my mindset and my playstyle. I don't know. I hope you guys can see where I'm coming from on this. This is a really interesting Druid deck. And he's getting absolutely wrecked here, wow. His taunts, sadly, were not really holding up for him. Sunkeeper Tarim is just going to go absolutely mental here. We even have a spot on the board for him, 6 minions on board. Tarim to fill the 7th slot.
I can see.
Yeah, he didn't have access to a swipe. He didn't have access to the tools he needed there. So that was quite a quick win. Okay, this next little game against a Shaman. Now, when you see a Shaman, you think aggro Shaman. I mean, in wild mode, I guess, that along with Malygos Shaman is probably the only 2 viable builds. I mean, there's Elemental Shaman, but who plays that? What else is there? There's Control Shaman, I guess, with Volcanoes and massive AoE. There's the Death Rattle Shaman. Is there no Death Rattle? No. Oh, I know what I mean. I mean the Ancestral Spirit Reincarnate Shaman with KT and big threats. But this guy is just hero powering.
Repent.
And my control style, mid-range style mindset comes into play, and I'm trading. I mean, spell power totems are dangerous to leave up, aren't they? So why wouldn't I trade? Should I have gone face? I mean, my minions are protected by Divine Shield. If he has spells, what are they going to do? If he has AoE, it's not really going to do much at all until he pops the shields. So maybe I should have gone face. I don't know. But Aggro Shaman confirmed. Aggro Shaman with slow start. Which I'm happy to take advantage of. Now I could play Call to Arms here. However, I'm looking at that Tunnel Trogg. What else am I going to silence in his deck? What else am I going to silence? Call to Arms may have given me a little bit more board presence. However, silencing a Trogg, that's interesting. It's a good thing to do. A good opportunity to use your silence effect. And a 4/3 body is still reasonable. I mean, next turn I may draw a Knife Juggler, and then I can coin out Call to Arms with a Juggler, which is even more powerful. We'll see. We're not in any rush. He's overloaded for 2, so his options this turn are going to be massively limited. This is a good spot to be in against Aggro Shaman. Could play Lotheb on curve here, or I could just Call to Arms. Choices, choices, choices.
Weapons ready.
A value trade there is pretty decent, I think, with our mini-bot and his taunt. May as well go for board presence. Because we've seen Maelstrom Portal, we've seen a copy of it, so we're feeling pretty safe here. And we may as well just push damage to the face. We have another weapon in hand via Must of Battle. Yeah, it's over. Okay. Going up against a Warlock. Now, this is where it's going to get tough. The expectation is Cubelock. And that's not what we want to see. We want to stop pushing early damage against Cubelock, and when our first card that we can play costs 3, that's actually going to let him perhaps get a bit of a foothold on the board. Juggler is a 2-drop, but unfortunately it just dies to his Librarian, therefore we're forced to hero power. That's fine.
Battle.
Okay, so at least we can kill his 2/3, we can stop him developing forward. Because that's a big issue with this deck. If your opponent develops a board that's bigger than yours, they can just start trading into your low attack, low health minions turn after turn after turn, and then you lose tempo. Call to Arms, very, very powerful card, obviously. It's just giving me board presence, just like that. Probably a card that could do with nerfing. Correction, I had board presence. Defile, very, very good for him, obviously. But interesting that he was very liberal with his use of Defile. He didn't want to wait. He just said, oh, 3 minions on board, let's Defile. Perhaps he should have waited. So we've seen one Defile, may have a second copy. Hellfire is the other thing that we're scared of. But if you look at our hand, there's serious refill capability. And we've got another call to arms, so we may as well play the juggler and get the juggle value here. Double Annoyatron on the board. Feels good.
From the void I come.
Okay, this is where it gets tough. What does he get? He gets Doomguard. That's good. Those Annoyatrons doing serious work here with those Divine Shields. Actually really good cards in this deck because they'll eat up 2 attacks each, and that gives you an opportunity to develop more stuff on your board. He has to focus on trying to get through the Annoyatrons. You continue developing and continue hitting his face. That's the strategy here. Of course, we are scared of more AoE. Now, had he got the Voidlord, we have no silence in hand, so that could have been a problem. So we're sort of going all in here. We're filling the board completely. And I guess what I'm trying to do here is to play around Defile and Hellfire at the same time by giving my Silverhand recruits 4 health. I think a lot of people would have picked the attack buff, but I've gone for the health buff because I have a Quartermaster in hand. So I'm going to get the attack buff anyway at some point in this game, assuming my dudes survive. So that's the strategy, that's the thinking behind that. And unfortunately for him, he's not had access to a Voidlord, and I think that's what's going to lose him this game.
No. Trust me.
Had he had access to a Voidlord, would it have changed much though? Because when you can buff your recruits, I mean, there's a silence effect that we've just drawn to. So, would it really have changed anything? That's the question. Perhaps it would have delayed the inevitable by 1 turn, maybe 2 turns. But there's a streak into rank 6. Feels good. Now, at this point, you're at rank 6. It's the first day of the season, and you're thinking to yourself, this feels too good to be true. Surely I'm going to start losing now. Now, notice there with my mulligan, I kept the mini-bot. I mean, that's an instant keep. I also kept Rallying Blade, and why did I keep the Rallying Blade? It's that control mid-rangey mindset of mine kicking into gear. I probably should have mulliganed it away and looked for a 1-drop. So once again, in another game, I've sort of passed on my turn 1. However, I don't think it's going to be an issue. I really don't think it's going to be an issue. Because look what I can do now with this coin. I can coin out Call to Arms.
Weapons ready.
So whilst my mulliganing hasn't been technically correct as such, it's really going to work out here keeping that Rallying Blade, because I have 2 Divine Shield minions on board. This rogue is being incredibly slow. Don't even know what kind of a rogue this is. But yeah, we're just going to flood the board. And we're setting up now for a Quartermaster turn. Even 2 dudes buffed with Quartermaster is decent. What are we vulnerable to? Fan of Knives? Maybe. But even then, it's not going to do a huge amount for him, and that would be most of his turn. Oh gosh, this isn't going well for him. This really is not going well for him at all. We just play the Quartermaster here. We could have played Stegadon, maybe, but I think this is better. We put him at 1. Was there any way to have actually got lethal there? Would Stegadon have provided lethal with a +3 attack buff? I think it would have, but oh well. There's no coming back. They don't run healing, right? So there's no coming back for him. Okay. Let's look at our final game here. So we're fighting for rank 5. Going up against a mage. More than likely it's Secrets Mage, right? You don't see Reno Mage anymore, apart from that one guy, the one salty guy that I faced earlier. And it is Secrets Mage. So now it's sort of a race to control the board initially. And then to hope that he starts throwing his burn into our minions rather than at our face. The Rallying Blade and Neutron synergy is so good for us. And I love playing a Neutron. I've not played it competitively on the ladder for quite some time, so having an excuse to play it now is so cool. Okay, 2 secrets up. One of them is probably Explosive Runes, and we've probably got Counter Spell in play as well. So, a heads up play here. Counter Spell with Divine Favour. Because with the way this game is going, I'm not going to need Divine Favour. So now we should be free just to play the Call to Arms. So you could see him trying to edge forward on the board here, but this is why Call to Arms is so broken. Seriously so broken. Putting 3 bodies on board has now just given me tempo over him, given me control of the board over him. Mana Worm can do something for him, but it's going to be tough. Fascinating. He's popping a Divine Shield because he fears a second Rallying Blade. He leaves the Knife Juggler... Oh, there's Rallying Blade. But he leaves the Knife Juggler alive. That is... I thought it was Explosive Runes. It's Potion of Polymorph, which kills his 2-1. That's insane. And now I'm just going to Rallying Blade. I could have played Muster. Had a choice there. But I think this is just much cleaner. My health total is reasonable. I'm in a much better position than him when it comes to taking damage. And he's wasting these turns with the pings. I mean, I think it's the correct play, because he's trying to get rid of my board, but it's putting him on the back foot, because he's not developing stuff that's significant. Now, Blizzard from Primordial Glyph was very good for him, but I can still put stuff on the board. Yeah, certainly wasn't expecting the Blizzard. Probably a good thing then that I didn't play Muster for Battle, because my dudes would have just been eaten up. So anyway, we go face here with the weapon, because we have another weapon to play. And I'm going to play the Spellbreaker. What am I going to silence in his deck? Sorcerer's Apprentice, maybe? What am I going to silence? So, the 4-3 body is what we're after here, because we need to keep the pressure on. We're running out of cards now. We're getting to the point where if he can stabilise, maybe he plays another glyph, discovers an AoE, he can win the game. Highly unlikely, but there's always a possibility. Okay, that's a counter spell. I could have played Equality to get round it, and then played Lost in the Jungle. But then our 4-3 would have been vulnerable to a ping. At the moment, I value the 4 damage from the Spellbreaker. So, want to keep it at 3 health. Well, that's not a taunt. Not counterspell, obviously. So
The battle! The battle!
if it's ice block,
The battle
we pop him here,
will be purged!
and it's not ice block. Even if it was ice block, and even if he was able to clear my board, we had the weapon. We could have hit his face again the following turn and still won the game. Okay, so Dabs, Dude Paladin. Took me from rank 8 to rank 5, undefeated with a streak. Feels really, really good. A friend of mine suggested that I should push Legend with this deck. I entirely believe that it is possible. I think the games would get a tad harder as you journey towards Legend, but the question is, can I be bothered? Or now, is it time for me to start experimenting with interesting decks, less overpowered decks, and you know, just to have a bit more fun with Hearthstone now that I'm at rank 5, which is my target. What do I think of this deck in general? Obviously, as you've seen, it is effective. Double equality, though, seemed somewhat unnecessary for me, considering who I was going up against on the ladder. You know, a lot of mages, the occasional Warlock with cubes and Voidlords, but obviously at the start of a season things were a tad more aggressive, so maybe one copy of Equality would be fine, and I should put maybe a second Crystal Lion into the deck, keeping in mind that Dab played this deck at a tournament, and tournament decks do not always make for great ladder decks, or the most optimum of ladder decks. I think if you are laddering up with a deck, you should optimize it according to the conditions on the ladder that you are facing at that point in time. So obviously, if I suddenly started facing more control decks, this deck itself would work out very well given the double equality and double Spellbreaker. Loatheb is a card that I really like in this deck, particularly if you're going up against a control style deck that has big spells and AoE. If you can play Loatheb on turn 5 on curve, maybe that stops a blizzard on turn 6, or if you're going up against a priest and you suspect Dragonfire Potion on turn 6. So there's various possibilities there with Loatheb, and I really do like his inclusion in the deck, and if anything at all, he is a solid 5/5 body. Does 5 to the face. Pretty good. Sunkeeper Tarim. I'd like to get more value with that card, and certainly with Lost in the Jungle, Muster for Battle. All of a sudden on turn 10, if you can combo 1 cost Lost in the Jungle, 3 cost Muster, 6 cost Tarim, that's a significant board presence that you'd have there with sort of buffed up dudes. That in itself can be game winning if they can't respond to it in a favourable manner on the following turn. And let's not forget the power of Quartermaster, which was on display in this video. So thank you very much for joining me, everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, give me a subscribe. I would be grateful. And I'll see you guys all again very soon for more Wild Mode fun.